Hello, I'm the Eternal Newbie. The extra L is for let. As in, there are some things you just don't let happen. You don't let your friends pee on an electric fence. You don't let the dog eat cooked chicken bones. And you don't let the problem player DM for your group. That's just asking for trouble. In today's first tale, that's exactly what happens. And to be fair, it did last longer than I thought it would. Almost an hour. But that's not all. We have two tales to terrify today. The second one has to do with a very impatient and possibly violent player. Let's get to it, shall we? Quick background. Before the person in question was a GM for this campaign, he was a bit of a problem player in our group. He mostly played murder hobos that would kill any NPC he interacted with if they didn't answer a question the way he liked. One example is that he would ask anyone he met, Bahamut or Tiamat. He wouldn't elaborate any further, and if the NPC said the wrong answer, he would attack. After derailing a couple of campaigns he played in, he expressed interest in trying to run a game on his own. Our group agreed, essentially thinking, can't be worse than how he plays, maybe he'll be a better GM. Oh boy, were we in for something. The GM picked D&D 5e as the system he wanted to run with a homebrew world and decided against the session 0. I wasn't able to make the first session due to a sudden scheduling conflict, but I didn't want to hold everyone up, so I just told them to play without me. The party of 3 started on the side of a road outside a major city, and were tasked with going into a dungeon a couple of miles away. The party, having no real idea what the campaign was going to be about, thought it would be best to go into town and maybe get some information and use what money they have for supplies. The GM seemed a bit annoyed, but allowed it. Along the way, as the party were just walking along the road, the GM would make them do multiple breathing checks. He looked the players in the eye and said, "Roll to see if you remember to breathe." If you failed the check, your character momentarily passed out and took blunt damage from falling to the ground due to lack of oxygen. He had similar rolls for walking and blinking. The party thought it was kind of funny at first, but they had to do multiples of each check, and it seemed whatever number they had to hit was arbitrary, as sometimes a 15 would be too low, while another character rolling a 10 was enough to pass the check, with no rhyme or reason. The party eventually reached the gate of the city, being guarded by 2 mouse folk with swords and plate armor. The mouse folk wouldn't allow them inside, but didn't give any reason why. One of the players tried to persuade the guards to let them in, does a persuasion check, and rolled a 15. This somehow failed so badly that the guards immediately became hostile and attacked the party. Okay, not an ideal situation, but they're mouse folk, and it's 3 versus 2, and it's the first session. How bad could this be? Well, the GM seemed to be very agitated that the players dared to think to go into town, so he gave these guards plus 25 to their attacks and damage rolls, and their armor class was well over the maximum that anyone was able to roll, so the party couldn't get a single hit in. Within a couple of rounds, the party was wiped out and the session was called then and there. The session lasted under an hour. He never GM'd any of our games again. To leave this story on a more positive note, after this experience, he seemed to realize that how he liked to play the game was not fun for the rest of us, and any new characters he ran were much less prone to random murder streaks. I'm glad the problem player learned his lesson, but still, imagine you're playing a game with this new DM, one you know, and the very first roll of the game is, roll to see if you remember to breathe. Forgetting for a moment that breathing is an autonomic function, meaning the body does it whether you think about it or not, and just think about how dumb that is. Imagine if he pulled it in battle. Oh wait, we don't have to imagine it because what he did was worse. Plus 25 to hit and plus 25 damage? A bit overkill, don't you think? I mean, 20 would have done the job just fine. Hell, Tiamat doesn't even get a plus 25 to hit. And an armor class that is unhittable. Sounds like the DM only cared about this joke aspect of the campaign. I bet they didn't prepare at all and just pulled everything out of their butt. Alright, let's move on to the next story, shall we? The group in the story comprised of 5 level 7 players. Alright, we're halfway into the session. The party enters a town and stocks up at the local bazaar before heading to the bar and meeting the 4th new character of that one player who constantly changes their character because they get bored easily. That player, a druid, is stuck in this town paying off a debt sweeping the floors of the tavern. The players order some drinks and speak to the bartender and then meet a were-rat, the tavern owner. The owner buys the party some drinks on the house as an act of good faith. Anyway, some debtors hired a group of bounty hunters to kill the bar owner, and he asks for the party to stop his assailants for a reward. The party then openly, in character, talks about just killing the bar owner. They decide to enter combat, and they start working on dispatching the bounty hunters. Druid decides to not enter combat and continue sweeping. Desperate, the bar owner offers to clear the debt of Druid in exchange for helping save his life. Druid decides to enter combat. Druid rolls initiative, getting a 24. They are then at the top of the turn order, and it is the middle of the round. They get angry, but I tell them they will have to wait until the start of the round to take their turn. On their turn, they get angry at me for asking what they will do on their turn after they had like 5 minutes beforehand to decide. They then say they want to strangle me for interrupting them by asking questions during combat such as, how much damage does it do? And where do you place that? I will admit it may have felt like I was rushing them, but that was because they were holding up everybody else because they were choosing not to plan on other players' turns. This was after I had already told them to plan their turns before attacking. This combat took about 3 hours, and the party was fighting 6 creatures, with ACs of 15 and hit point totals of 56. It was not a matter of difficulty. This was meant to be a quick battle. At the end, the bar owner is murdered by a mysterious plot-relevant bounty hunter who the party chose not to pursue. Alright, that's fine. 4 openly non-hostile guards approach the bar in confusion. Druid blocks the door with a creature they summoned while the ranger loots the bodies alongside Druid. The guards were reasonable. Wanted to take the group in and simply ask questions. Just doing their job. The party did not attempt to hide the theft and left nobody alive to prove their innocence. Instead of persuading or choosing to roll intimidation on the guards, they instead threatened them repeatedly and refused to comply with their demands. Then the ranger cast web on the guards. That's where the session ended. This was meant to be an opportunity to introduce the new PC character and location. The druid defended antagonizing the guards by claiming the guards were pigs and pointing out the flaws in this town's law enforcement. Note, they knew nothing about this town's law enforcement and had zero evidence to back up any of these claims. It was just bold claims to avoid the fact they were being murder hobos. Then, at the end of it all, Druid complained to me that the 6 bounty hunters who took, on average, less than 50 or 40 seconds per turn had too many actions. And said throughout the game, they wanted to punch me in the face. Very, very frustrating experience. Even from the perspective of someone who believes I was in the wrong here, threatening to strangle or punch the DM over a board game is, in my eyes, reprehensible. You'll get no arguments here. Threatening any kind of physical violence has no place at the table, and anyone who does it needs to be gone from the group. It's surprising, too. Druid's player sounded like such a reasonable person before all this went down. Personally, I think DM should have taken a page from the Joke DM's book and thrown a few mousefolk at him. Only this time, let's be a little more reasonable. Only plus 20 to hit. But enough from me. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts in comment and or like form. If you're new around here, how about sticking around with a sub? In any case, thank you so much for watching, and as always, play your character. Don't let your character play you.